The war had been raging for decades. The Galactic Coalition, a fragile alliance of a dozen species, was on the brink of collapse. The Krelax, a ruthless insectoid race, had swept through the galaxy like a plague, their swarms devouring everything in their path. Planet after planet fell, their defenses crumbling under the relentless assault. The Coalition's fleets were outmatched, their armies outnumbered, and their morale shattered. They were losing the war, and they knew it. On the front lines of the dying planet Xerxes 9, Commander Vela of the Zarathi Alliance stood in the ruins of what was once a thriving city. Her forearms trembled as she clutched her plasma rifle, her scales dulled by the ash-filled air. Around her, the remnants of her battalion huddled in the shadows of crumbling buildings, their weapons barely functional, their spirits broken. The Krelax were coming. She could hear the chittering of their mandibles, the skittering of their clawed feet on the cracked pavement. They would be overrun within minutes. "Commander," hissed Lieutenant Carr, a reptilian Scythian, his forked tongue flicking nervously. "We can't hold them off any longer. We need to retreat." Vela's heart sank. Retreat? To where? The Coalition had no more reinforcements to send. Xerxes 9 was their last stand. If they fell here, the Krelax would have a clear path to the core worlds. The galaxy would burn. Before she could respond, a deafening roar split the sky. Vela looked up, her compound eyes widening in disbelief. A streak of fire tore through the atmosphere, growing larger and brighter by the second. It wasn't a ship. It was too small, too fast. It was a pod. The pod slammed into the ground just beyond their position, sending a shockwave that knocked Vela off her feet. Dust and debris filled the air, and for a moment everything was still. Then, with a hiss of hydraulics, the pod's hatch burst open. Out stepped a figure unlike anything Vela had ever seen. It was tall, bipedal, and clad in sleek black armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. The helmet's visor glowed a faint blue, and in its hands it carried a weapon that hummed with barely contained energy. The figure turned its head, scanning the area, and Vela felt a chill run down her spine. This was no alien. This was a human. The Krelax, momentarily stunned by the pod's impact, regrouped and surged forward, their chittering growing louder. The human didn't flinch. It raised its weapon, a device the Coalition had no record of, and fired. A beam of pure energy lanced out, cutting through the Krelax like a scythe through wheat. Dozens fell in an instant, their bodies disintegrating into ash. Vela and her soldiers stared in stunned silence as the human moved with impossible speed and precision. It was a whirlwind of destruction, its weapon firing in short, controlled bursts, each shot finding its mark. The Krelax, for all their numbers, were helpless. They couldn't touch it. They couldn't even get close. "What? What is that thing?" Carr whispered, his voice trembling. Vela didn't answer. She couldn't. She had heard stories of humans, of course. They were a young species, barely capable of interstellar travel. The Coalition had dismissed them as irrelevant, too primitive to contribute to the war effort. But this was something else entirely. The human fought like a force of nature, its movements fluid and efficient, its weapon never missing its target. It didn't speak, didn't pause, didn't hesitate. It was a machine of war, and it was winning. Within minutes, the Krelax were in full retreat, their swarms scattering in disarray. The human watched them go, its weapon still humming in its hands. Then, slowly, it turned and walked toward Vela and her soldiers. Vela's heart pounded as the human approached. Up close, she could see the intricate details of its armor, the faint scars and scorch marks that hinted at countless battles. The visor's glow dimmed, and the human reached up, removing its helmet. The face that greeted her was both alien and familiar. It was human, yes, but there was something in its eyes, a fire, a determination that transcended species. It was the look of someone who had seen the worst the galaxy had to offer and refused to back down. "Commander Vela," the human said, its voice deep and steady. "I'm Captain Alex Ryder of the Terran Defense Force. Sorry, I am late." Vela blinked, struggling to process what she was hearing. "Late? You came alone?" Ryder smirked, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "Humans don't need an army to make a difference. Sometimes, all it takes is one." Vela looked around at the devastation, at the bodies of the Krelax littering the ground. For the first time in years, she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. "You've turned the tide," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But the war, it's far from over." Ryder nodded, his expression hardening. "Then let's finish it." As the human reattached his helmet and turned to face the horizon, Vela felt a surge of determination. They had been losing the war, but now, with a single human by their side, she dared to believe they could win.